In July 2016, Verizon agreed to buy Yahoo's core internet business for $483 billion. It was effectively a fire sale, reducing the company that once defined the American internet into a minor telecommunications asset. At its peak, Yahoo was valued at $125 billion. The company had famously declined a $44 billion buyout offer from Microsoft in 2008. It had the chance to buy Google for a fraction of its worth, and later missed acquiring Facebook. But the real collapse was not just financial. It was the quiet disappearance of a daily digital habit. For a generation of Americans, opening a desktop browser meant looking at a crowded, purple-branded directory that made the chaotic web feel organized. When that ecosystem shattered, users lost a familiar portal, and developers abandoned a walled garden that no longer held their attention. A decade earlier, that same purple icon had meant the exact opposite of failure. It meant you were finally online. But the real story of Yahoo is not only the story of a corporate sale. It is the story of how America first trusted a human-curated directory, and what happened when the internet became too big for anyone to organize. Every week, we tell the stories of American platforms, devices, software, stores, and screens that once taught the country what the future felt like and what happened when the market moved on. Subscribe if that history matters to you. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place, inside a cramped trailer on the campus of Stanford University in 1994. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place, inside a cramped, windowless trailer on the campus of Stanford University in Palo Alto, California, in early 1994. At the time, the American internet was not a daily habit. It was a frontier. The World Wide Web had been born, but it completely lacked a map. If an American user managed to connect a beige desktop computer to a modem, a device that let computers send data over phone lines by converting digital information into audio static, they faced a fundamental problem. Once the connection was made and the shrieking tone of the dial-up sequence finally went silent, there was nowhere obvious to go. There were no algorithmic search engines to instantly guess what a user wanted. There was no central social feed. The web was a scattered, chaotic collection of academic papers, personal pages, government databases, and early corporate experiments, all hidden behind complex strings of text called URLs. To find something on a screen, a user had to know exactly where it was located. Two electrical engineering graduate students, Jerry Yang and David Philo, were supposed to be writing their dissertations in that trailer. Instead, they spent their days and nights surfing this chaotic new web. They began keeping a list of their favorite sites simply to share them with friends. They called it Jerry and David's Guide to the World Wide Web. It was not a sophisticated software program. It was a labor-intensive, human-curated directory. Yang and Philo manually categorized websites into a logical hierarchy: arts, business, computers, entertainment, news, recreation. If a user in a college computer lab wanted to find a website about independent film, they clicked through the broad categories until they drilled down to a specific blue link. This manual curation was the breakthrough. In 1994, the internet was terrifying to the average American consumer. It felt like an unlit city with no street signs. Jerry and David's Guide turned on the street lights. Within months, the list grew so large that they had to divide it into subcategories, and then sub-subcategories. The audience was no longer just a few friends at Stanford. It was early internet adopters, academics, and curious technologists across the country. In April 1994, they renamed the guide. They chose an acronym, yet another hierarchical officious oracle, Yahoo. The problem was not just that the web was growing. The problem was that the physical landscape of the American desktop was changing. Across the country, personal computers, machines designed for one person to use directly, usually at a desk or in a home, were moving out of the home office and into the family living room. Companies like Compaq, Gateway, and Packard Bell were shipping millions of beige desktop towers to the suburbs. But a computer without the internet was just a localized calculator. When a family wanted to go online, they opened a browser. A browser, software used to view websites, decided which company stood between an American user and the web. And every browser needed a starting page. It needed a homepage. Yahoo rapidly became that default homepage. It was a massive directory of blue links sitting on a plain gray background. It was not elegant by modern standards, but it was incredibly functional. For a family in Ohio staring at a bulky CRT monitor, that screen told them exactly what was available on this new digital frontier. It made the internet feel contained. By the fall of 1994, the traffic hitting the Stanford University network was staggering. Yahoo was receiving over 1 million hits a day. This was not just a metric. It was a physical problem. Every time a user clicked a link, a request traveled across the country to a server, a computer that provides data, websites, and files to other computers. The Stanford servers were buckling under the weight of the traffic. The university network was designed for academic research, not for serving as the primary switchboard for the entire global internet. In early 1995, Stanford administrators politely asked Yang and Philo to move their massive project off campus. The hobby had outgrown the institution. This forced a permanent decision. The internet was still largely an academic and government space. Commercializing it was controversial, but to keep the servers running, Yahoo needed money. In March 1995, Yahoo incorporated as a business. Sequoia Capital, a legendary Silicon Valley venture capital firm, recognized that this directory was becoming a bottleneck for human attention. In April, Sequoia invested $2 million. But how does a free directory make money without charging users for access? The answer would shape the entire future of the American internet. Yahoo embraced the ad model, a business model where attention and user data help sell advertising. In August 1995, Yahoo placed its first banner ads on the directory. 5 companies, including Reuters and MasterCard, paid to have their graphics displayed to Yahoo's massive daily audience. It was a physical translation of the highway billboard model to a digital screen. It proved that a website could generate massive revenue simply by being the place where people looked first. The founders hired Tim Kugel, a veteran executive, as CEO, and Jeffrey Mallett as Chief Operating Officer. They brought corporate discipline to a company that had started in a messy trailer. The engineering and editorial teams moved into a real corporate office in Sunnyvale, California. They hired surfers, actual human beings whose full-time job was to review new websites and place them into the correct categories. Yahoo was no longer just a list of links. It was an ecosystem. The network of hardware, software, users, developers, advertisers, and services that make a platform valuable was beginning to form around that simple purple logo. By the time the company went public in April 1996, with a spectacular IPO that valued the young startup at hundreds of millions of dollars, the original mission had shifted. Yahoo was not just organizing the web anymore. It was becoming the primary destination. The directory was ready. America still had to decide where the future of its attention would live. The directory had solved the initial problem of the internet. It gave the web a map. But by 1996, Yahoo's leadership realized that a map had a fatal business flaw. Once a user found their destination, they left. If the American internet was going to be funded by an ad model, attention could not just be directed. It had to be captured and held. This realization sparked the transition from a simple directory to a web portal. A central website that provides a broad array of services, news, email, and forums to keep users from ever needing to leave, became the definitive American digital strategy of the late 1990s. In 1996, an American family setting up a new Packard Bell or Gateway desktop in their living room, usually connected to the internet through a dial-up service like America Online. But once they bypassed the AOL walled garden and opened a standalone browser like Netscape Navigator, they needed a starting point on the open web. Yahoo aggressively positioned itself as that default starting point. They wanted the purple logo to be the first thing a user saw when the CRT monitor flickered and the browser window finally loaded. To keep users on that screen, Yahoo began absorbing every discrete function of the internet into its own ecosystem. They launched My Yahoo in the fall of 1996, allowing users to customize their own starting page. A user could track their local weather in Chicago, read national headlines syndicated from Reuters, and follow sports scores, all on a single gray interface dotted with blue links. In an era where a 56K modem, a device that let computers send data over phone lines, took seconds or even minutes to load a single graphic-heavy website, Yahoo's plain design was a massive competitive advantage. The portal was mostly text. It loaded almost instantly. For an American family paying for internet access by the minute or the hour, speed was money. The text-heavy interface was not a design failure. It was a perfect adaptation to the hardware limits of the time. But news and weather were not enough to build a permanent user moat. The real anchor was human communication. In March 1997, Yahoo acquired a startup called 411, which had built an early web-based email service named Rocket Mail. By October of that year, this was rebranded as Yahoo Mail. Before this, most Americans used email provided by their school, their corporate IT department, or their internet service provider. Those email addresses were tied to a physical location or a monthly telecom bill. Yahoo Mail was free, accessible from any browser in the world, and permanent. A student at Ohio State University could create a Yahoo Mail account in a campus computer lab, check it on their parents' computer during the holidays, and keep it after graduation. This was a distribution breakthrough. The email inbox was the ultimate sticky application. Once a user gave their Yahoo Mail address to their friends, family, and bank, leaving the platform became incredibly difficult. The directory had brought them in, but the inbox locked them down. Months later, in early 1998, the company launched Yahoo Pager, which soon evolved into Yahoo Messenger, instant messenger, software that lets users send short messages in real time, changed how America talked. Instead of tying up the household phone line for a voice call, teenagers and office workers could keep a small chat window open in the corner of their screen. The physical rhythm of American communication shifted to the staccato click of a desktop keyboard. These additions fundamentally changed Yahoo's position. It was no longer just a search tool. It was a digital destination. This ecosystem approach was completely alien to the traditional software market dominated by Microsoft, where users paid $50 or more for a physical box of software at a CompUSA or mall electronics store. Yahoo's software was delivered over the network, updated silently on servers, and cost the user nothing upfront. The price of admission was simply their attention, which Yahoo sold to advertisers at a massive premium. Nowhere was this more visible than with Yahoo Finance, launched in 1997. It provided free stock quotes, financial news, and message boards. In American office cubicles, checking the Yahoo Finance ticker became a daily ritual. Wall Street traders and casual retail investors alike relied on it to track the booming tech market. The message boards became early online communities, shaping the culture of internet stock trading. Yahoo was not just indexing the web, it was actively shaping the daily habits of the American economy. By 1998, the internet was rapidly expanding, and competitors like Excite, Lycos, and Microsoft's MSN were aggressively trying to build their own portals. But Yahoo had the first mover advantage and a massive user base. They partnered with hardware manufacturers and internet service providers to ensure Yahoo was the default homepage on millions of new computer installations. They struck deals to have the Yahoo search function embedded directly into web browsers. Every new feature added another wall to the garden. There was Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Games, Yahoo Travel, and Yahoo Auctions. The interface grew more crowded, packed with text links, banner ads, and search bars. But to the American user of the late 1990s, this density did not feel like clutter. It felt like utility. It felt like everything they could possibly want from the internet was neatly arranged on a single screen. The retention loop was flawless. A user came to search for a website, noticed a news headline, clicked over to check their email, saw a flashing notification from Yahoo Messenger, and spent an hour chatting with a friend. They had spent their entire online session without ever leaving Yahoo's servers. By the end of 1998, Yahoo was handling 95 million page views a day. The platform had captured the American desktop. But that same strategy of building a walled garden would later become the trap. By 1999, Yahoo was no longer just a technology company operating out of Sunnyvale, California. It was an inescapable cultural force. The purple exclamation point had jumped from the gray background of the browser window into physical American life. The company launched a massive advertising campaign with the slogan, "Do you Yahoo?" It aired during the Super Bowl, on MTV, and during primetime television broadcasts. The logo was painted on the sides of city buses in New York, plastered on massive billboards along Highway 101 in Silicon Valley, and printed on promotional mouse pads handed out at trade shows. Yahoo had successfully positioned itself at the absolute center of the American tech trade infrastructure. If a family walked into a Circuit City, a CompUSA, or a Best Buy in 1999 and purchased a new compact Presario or a Gateway desktop, the famous computer shipped in cow-spotted boxes, there was a high probability that the machine came with software already pointing to Yahoo. When the user plugged a phone cord into the back of the beige tower and established a dial-up connection, the browser did not open to a blank page. It opened to Yahoo. This was not just about search anymore. The walled garden was fully constructed. In an American college dorm room, students used Yahoo Messenger to coordinate dinner plans. In office cubicles, employees secretly played Yahoo games, specifically pool and chess, hidden behind spreadsheets. Yahoo Groups became the default infrastructure for online communities, hosting millions of forums where Americans discussed everything from neighborhood politics to vintage car repair. In an American house where the dial-up modem shrieked its connection, Yahoo did not merely organize websites. It decided what the country read, who it emailed, and how it learned to trust the digital world. For millions of people, Yahoo was not a portal to the internet. Yahoo was the internet. This sheer volume of human attention translated into unprecedented financial gravity on Wall Street. As the dot-com bubble inflated, Yahoo's stock price defied traditional business logic. The ad model was working flawlessly. Companies were paying millions of dollars to place small, animated rectangular banner graphics at the top of the Yahoo homepage. But the massive stock valuation was based on something larger than banner ads: the belief that Yahoo had permanently monopolized American screen time. Armed with a soaring stock price, Yahoo began using its shares as a currency to buy the future. In one of the most famous acquisitions of the era, Yahoo purchased Broadcast.com in 1999 for an incredible $5.7 billion in stock. It was a staggering number that revealed the paradox of the dot-com era. Broadcast.com, led by Mark Cuban, had a vision for streaming, delivering audio or video over the internet, without requiring the user to own a permanent physical copy. But in 1999, the vast majority of American internet users were still constrained by slow 56K dial-up modems. Streaming video was a stuttering, pixelated mess that buffered for minutes only to play seconds of low-quality footage. The physical hardware of the American internet simply could not support the vision. Yet the stock market cheered the acquisition. Yahoo's share price kept climbing. The underlying reality of copper phone lines and slow processors did not matter, as long as the portal kept adding features. Soon after, Yahoo spent another $3.6 billion to acquire GeoCities, a massive network of user-created personal web pages. Yahoo was buying entire digital cities just to ensure the citizens stayed inside the purple walls. By early 2000, Yahoo's valuation reached an astonishing $125 billion. It was the most valuable company on the internet and one of the most valuable corporations in American history. The founders, who had started curating links in a windowless Stanford trailer just 6 years earlier, were now billionaires. The company had offices around the globe. It had the largest audience, the most lucrative advertisers, and a digital ecosystem that seemed impossible to breach. The walled garden was perfect, but absolute dominance often breeds a specific kind of blindness. The blindness was rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of what the internet was about to become. The core philosophy of a web portal was retention. The goal was to keep an American user inside the ecosystem for as long as possible, serving them banner ads alongside their emails, stock quotes, and weather updates. But algorithmic search, a system that ranks web pages mathematically based on relevance rather than human categorization, was designed to do the exact opposite. A good search engine was meant to get a user off the website and to their final destination as quickly as possible. To a portal executive in the late 1990s, this kind of efficiency was not a feature. It was a threat to the business model. This philosophical divide led to one of the most consequential decisions in American corporate history. Back in 1998, two other Stanford graduate students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, had developed a highly efficient search algorithm called PageRank. They approached Yahoo and offered to sell their technology for $1 million. Yahoo declined. The portal executives reasoned that if a search engine was too fast and too accurate, users would leave Yahoo faster. The company wanted users to linger in the directory, clicking through human-curated subcategories, generating page views and advertising revenue along the way. But by 2000, the sheer scale of the web had broken the directory model. It was no longer physically possible for human employees in a Sunnyvale office to manually categorize the hundreds of thousands of new websites appearing every month. Yahoo needed a robust search engine just to keep its massive portal functional. Instead of building one from scratch, they decided to rent the technology. In June 2000, Yahoo signed a fateful agreement to make that same startup, now named Google, its default search provider. For the American user, the shift was subtle but profound. A student sitting at a desktop computer in a university lab would type a query into the familiar Yahoo search bar. The page would load, filled with accurate results. But down at the bottom of the screen, in small gray text, a new phrase appeared: powered by Google. Without realizing the danger, the largest internet company in America was acting as a free distribution network for its deadliest future rival. Yahoo believed it was simply outsourcing a back-end utility, treating algorithmic search like a plumbing issue. In reality, every time an American user searched through Yahoo, they were training Google's algorithm to become smarter, faster, and more dominant. When the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s, wiping out thousands of internet startups and erasing trillions of dollars in market value, Yahoo survived because its ecosystem was deeply embedded in American daily life. But the crash decimated the banner ad market. Yahoo's stock plummeted from 118s to barely $8 a share. To stabilize the empire, the board hired Terry Semel, a veteran Hollywood executive, as CEO in 2001. Semel recognized that dial-up was dying and that broadband, high-speed, always-on internet access was the future. He struck a massive partnership with SBC Communications, which would later become AT&T, to offer co-branded SBC Yahoo DSL. Instead of waiting for a dial-up modem to shriek and connect, millions of American households now had a router with a permanent connection to the internet. And when they opened their browser on that broadband connection, the SBC Yahoo portal was the absolute, unchangeable default homepage. This move secured Yahoo's traffic and stabilized its revenue. By 2002, the company was flush with cash again. Semmel, realizing the growing power of algorithmic search, finally attempted to buy Google. He offered $3 billion. Page and Brin demanded $5 billion. Semmel walked away, believing the price was wildly inflated for a company that was essentially just a search box. It was a fatal miscalculation. But in that specific historical moment, it did not feel like a failure. In the mid-2000s, the Yahoo ecosystem remained an absolute titan of American technology. The company was generating billions of dollars in revenue. Yahoo Mail was the undisputed king of the inbox. Yahoo Finance dictated the morning habits of Wall Street. Yahoo Messenger was how an entire generation of teenagers maintained their social lives after school. In an American house where the desktop computer sat in a shared room, Yahoo did not merely organize websites. It decided what the country read, who it emailed, and how it learned to trust the digital world. The screen was dominated. The next rival was already waiting in a clean, empty search bar. The first crack in the empire did not look like a failure. It looked like a design choice. By 2004, the American Family Computer Monitor was growing larger, transitioning from bulky, curved CRT displays to flat LCD screens. But as the screens expanded, the Yahoo homepage became increasingly claustrophobic. It was a dense, overwhelming mosaic of blue links, flashing banner ads, stock tickers, and weather modules. It was a physical manifestation of the walled garden, designed to trap human attention. But when that same American user opened a new tab and typed in Google's web address, they saw the exact opposite. They saw a pristine white screen, a colorful logo, and a single, empty search box. This visual contrast revealed a fundamental shift in user habits. The portal era had trained users to browse the internet like a catalog, but algorithmic search trained users to navigate the internet with intent. If a user wanted to buy a digital camera, they no longer needed to click through Yahoo's shopping directory and then into the electronics subcategory. They simply typed "buy digital camera" into Google and vanished to a retail site. Yahoo's homepage was suddenly competing with efficiency, and efficiency was winning. The slow collapse of Yahoo was driven by two massive shifts in the American technology landscape. Force 5, corporate consolidation and the failure of acquisitions, and Force 4, smartphone and app store convenience displacement. The corporate consolidation failures began during the Web 2.0 era. As the internet shifted from static web pages to interactive user-generated content, Yahoo attempted to buy its way into the future. In 2005, they acquired Flickr, a beloved photo-sharing website with a passionate community of digital photographers. Flickr possessed a powerful API, an application programming interface, which is a controlled way for software systems to communicate. This API allowed outside developers to build tools, widgets, and apps that integrated with Flickr, creating a vibrant, self-sustaining ecosystem. But once inside the Yahoo corporate structure, that ecosystem was suffocated. Yahoo did not view Flickr as an independent platform to be nurtured. They viewed it as a funnel to feed users back into the core portal. They forced Flickr users to abandon their original login credentials and merge their accounts into the Yahoo Mail ecosystem. Development on the API stalled. The passionate community felt alienated, and the developers left to build tools for other networks. Yahoo had successfully bought the company, but they completely destroyed the culture that made it valuable. A year later, in 2006, the failure to adapt became even more costly. CEO Terry Semel had his eyes on a rising social network primarily used on American college campuses. It was called Facebook. Semel offered Mark Zuckerberg $1 billion to acquire the platform. According to industry lore and later reports, Zuckerberg was actually willing to sell. But at the last minute, seeing a dip in Yahoo's stock, Semel lowered the offer to $850 million. Zuckerberg walked away. The social graph, the digital map of human relationships, friendships, and daily interactions, slipped permanently through Yahoo's fingers. The portal was losing the ability to dictate where Americans spent their time online. By 2008, the internal panic at Yahoo was visible to the entire industry. Google had achieved a near monopoly on algorithmic search advertising, printing billions of dollars in revenue, while Yahoo's market share bled out. In a desperate move to build an alliance against Google, Microsoft launched a massive, hostile takeover bid for Yahoo. The offer was $44 billion in cash and stock. It was a staggering premium. For Microsoft, acquiring Yahoo meant buying a massive share of human attention and merging it with their MSN portal and Bing search engine. But Jerry Yang, who had returned to the company as CEO, fought fiercely against the acquisition. He believed the offer fundamentally undervalued the company he had built in a Stanford trailer. After months of bitter public negotiations, Microsoft withdrew the offer. The day the deal collapsed, Yahoo's stock plummeted. The retention beat was devastating. It was the last time the portal would ever be valued as a true titan of the American tech industry. The board had turned down $44 billion for an ecosystem that was already quietly fracturing. In American office cubicles, users were still checking Yahoo Finance. In living rooms, families were still logging into Yahoo Mail. But the homepage was no longer the front door to the internet. It was a habit maintained by inertia, not innovation. And while Yahoo executives focused on fending off Microsoft and chasing Google on the desktop, they missed the hardware revolution happening completely outside the browser window. The desktop ecosystem was fracturing, but the fatal blow would not come from another website. It would come from a device that fit inside the user's pocket. The shift happened in the pocket, not on the desk. In 2007, the introduction of the modern smartphone, a mobile phone that combines calling, internet access, apps, camera features, and computing power, completely broke the psychological need for a web portal. For a decade, Yahoo had trained American users to rely on a single, unified homepage to organize their digital lives. But the smartphone introduced the App Store, a controlled marketplace where users find and install specific software applications. The App Store did not unify the internet, it fragmented it. An American user no longer needed to open a browser, navigate to Yahoo, and click a small weather link to see if it was going to rain in Chicago. They simply tapped a dedicated weather app on their touchscreen. They did not need Yahoo Finance to check their retirement portfolio. They opened a separate banking app. They did not need Yahoo Messenger to coordinate dinner plans. They used text messages or dedicated social media apps. The physical geography of American computing shifted. The shared family desktop computer in the living room, the very environment where Yahoo had established its dominance, was gathering dust. Instead, the family sat on the same couch, looking at separate smartphone screens. And on those screens, Yahoo was no longer a required destination. The walled garden was being dismantled brick by brick, icon by icon. The desktop browser, which Yahoo had fought so hard to dominate through default settings and toolbar deals, was no longer the primary way Americans experienced the internet. By 2012, Yahoo's board was desperate for a turnaround. They hired Marissa Mayer, a prominent early Google executive, as CEO to inject Silicon Valley engineering culture back into a company that had started to feel like a legacy media conglomerate. Mayer recognized the crisis immediately and declared a mobile-first strategy. She modernized the apps, redesigned the aging Yahoo Mail interface, and attempted to rebuild the developer talent pool by acquiring dozens of small startups. But the most aggressive move to reclaim relevance came in 2013, when Yahoo purchased Tumblr, a wildly popular microblogging platform, for $1.1 billion. Tumblr was the cultural center of the young American internet, filled with artists, fandoms, and highly engaged digital communities. Mayer famously promised not to screw it up. But once again, Force 5, corporate consolidation, proved fatal. The corporate cultures violently clashed. Yahoo's leadership, desperate to justify the massive price tag, tried to force traditional display advertising onto a platform whose users actively rebelled against corporate intrusion. The sales teams did not understand how to monetize the chaotic, fast-moving feed. Key executives left, the community began to migrate elsewhere, and Yahoo was eventually forced to write down nearly the entire value of the acquisition. The attempt to buy back the culture had failed. Then came the final devastating blow to user trust. In 2016, as Yahoo was quietly negotiating the sale of its core business, the company disclosed a catastrophic cybersecurity failure. It was revealed that in 2013 and 2014, the company had suffered massive data breaches. The scale was unprecedented. It eventually came to light that the breaches had compromised all 3 billion Yahoo user accounts, the largest digital theft in the history of the internet. The historical consequence was immediate and severe. A company that had spent 20 years asking Americans to trust it with their private emails, their financial portfolios, and their digital identities had fundamentally failed to protect that data. For millions of users whose very first internet footprint was an address ending in yahoo.com, it was the moment they finally abandoned the inbox and moved to competitors like Gmail. The breach directly impacted the company's survival. Verizon, a massive American telecommunications carrier looking to build a digital advertising network, was already in the process of buying Yahoo. Following the disclosure of these breaches, Verizon demanded a massive discount, shaving hundreds of millions of dollars off the final price. In June 2017, the transaction was finalized for $448 billion, a fraction of the $125 billion the company was worth at its peak, and a fraction of the $44 billion Microsoft had offered less than a decade earlier. The company that had mapped the early web, defined the portal era, and taught millions of Americans how to go online was absorbed into a telecom conglomerate and merged with another fallen empire, AOL. The independence of the purple giant was over. The ecosystem had finally collapsed under the weight of its own obsolescence. The interface cluttered. The search bar lost. The users migrated. The mobile apps scattered. The data breached. The logo remained. The homepage was gone. After the Verizon acquisition finalized in 2017, the remnants of Yahoo were awkwardly merged with the remnants of AOL, another fallen American tech titan, into a new corporate entity bizarrely named Oath. The synergy never materialized. In 2021, Verizon quietly sold the combined media assets to Apollo Global Management, a massive private equity firm, for $5 billion. The brand that had once defined the American internet, the company that had commanded a $125 billion valuation at the height of the dot-com bubble, had been reduced to a legacy financial instrument. It was no longer a technological pioneer exploring the digital frontier. It was a distressed asset traded between corporate conglomerates to extract whatever remaining advertising revenue could be squeezed from its aging user base. But the true legacy of Yahoo is not found in private equity boardrooms. It is found in the frantic efforts of digital archivists who recognize that when a walled garden collapses, the culture inside it is destroyed. When Yahoo announced the shutdown of GeoCities in 2009, it was not merely deleting a server. It was bulldozing the first digital neighborhoods built by ordinary Americans. Millions of personal web pages, with their flashing graphics and MIDI music files, were slated for execution. A rogue group of preservationists operating under the name the Archive Team worked desperately to scrape and download terabytes of GeoCities data before Yahoo pulled the plug. A decade later, the same tragedy played out when Yahoo shut down Yahoo Groups. Decades of niche American community history, forums detailing everything from local neighborhood politics to vintage car restoration and early digital fandoms, were wiped out because they no longer served the ad model. The preservationists who hunt through the Internet Archive for old Yahoo screenshots, who rebuild emulated versions of the classic 1990s portal, are not engaged in mere nostalgia. They are trying to rescue the first draft of American digital history. They are preserving physical proof of a time when the Internet was curated by human beings, rather than black box algorithms. Yet, the legacy of Yahoo is not entirely defined by dead links and deleted communities. The ultimate paradox of the platform is that while its cultural relevance evaporated entirely, its pure utility survived. This passes the not nostalgia test. Today, millions of Americans still use Yahoo Mail and Yahoo Finance every single day. This is not because they long for the late 1990s. This is due to the stubborn, unyielding gravity of digital infrastructure. If an American user created a Yahoo email address in a university computer lab in 1998, that inbox is now a 25-year digital filing cabinet. It is the recovery address for their banking apps. It holds their tax returns, their mortgage documents, their family photos, and a lifetime of forgotten passwords. Changing a primary email address introduces a massive point of friction in modern life. So the habit remains. The inbox is a permanent anchor. Similarly, Yahoo Finance remains one of the most heavily trafficked financial portals in the world. The layout is familiar, the ticker tape is fast, and the utility is undeniable. The brand lost the war for the internet, but it kept the inbox and the stock numbers. The surprise footnote of the Yahoo empire is that, despite the catastrophic failures of vision, the botched acquisitions, and the massive data breaches, the company still exists. It still generates billions of dollars in revenue, but it operates entirely as a collection of disconnected, functional utilities. It is a digital plumbing company quietly pumping data to users who no longer care about the purple exclamation point. The ecosystem is dead, but the tools survived. Yahoo taught America how to go online. It built the first comprehensive map for a chaotic digital frontier. It proved that a website could generate massive wealth simply by capturing human attention and holding it securely inside a walled garden. But the company fundamentally misunderstood the future it helped create. It believed the internet could be organized indefinitely by human hands, and it was eventually crushed by the cold, infinite efficiency of algorithmic search. It believed the desktop browser would remain the absolute center of American digital life, and it was systematically dismantled by the convenience of the smartphone and the App Store. The problem was never that America stopped wanting to be connected. The problem was that the internet simply became too big and too mobile for anyone to fit onto a single homepage. Today, the concept of a web portal feels like an artifact from a different digital civilization, but the remnants of that empire are still running quietly in the background of American life. Somewhere in an American office cubicle, a modern flat-screen monitor glows under fluorescent lights. A browser window is open, and a single tab silently updates the stock numbers on Yahoo Finance. Hidden behind it is a Yahoo Mail inbox, filled with 2 decades of digital life, still functioning, still holding the past, long after the empire that built it has faded away. See you in the next one.